This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs. Hi, I'm Gordon Burkell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course, follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u. Every week, we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by creative director for Imaginary Forces, Ronnie Koff, whose work includes the title sequences for Candy, Foundation, and his recently Emmy-nominated work for Apple's Hello Tomorrow, just to name a few. Welcome to the show, Ronnie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I guess, how did you get into title sequences? That's like, it's a very specific area.
Well, I started out as a graphic designer. I went to art school. I went to Ringling School of Art. And I was really interested in design. Originally, I thought I was going to be more of a print designer. And a friend of mine was interested in motion, and I became interested in it. And then he moved out to Hollywood to work for Imaginary Forces, and I followed him out to Hollywood.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And you know, it's kind of, motion has become something that it's almost like in a way an evolved version of print, because you're able to create iconic images but put them into motion. So I do, you know, I love the idea of kind of expanding the toolkit through motion as opposed to the limitations of print.
Yeah, well, and it feels like in the last 15 to 20 years with the sort of TV renaissance, there's been this effort to put in really high quality titles nowadays, whereas before it was just like, here's shots from the show with the titles over top.
Yeah, I mean, because TV has become so predominant, I feel like it kind of adapted to these beautiful title sequences that were originally kind of put into film.
Yeah.
But you know, I feel like there's always been really beautiful title sequences. And you know, now we're looking at title sequences that use technology in a different way, but you know, it's been going on for a while.
So now with Hello Tomorrow, what was the direction that you were given?
Okay. With Hello Tomorrow, we had we spoke to the showrunners, and you know, they wanted to really present the kind of world of the show and the scope and the technology and just the cool factor. With an interesting story in the title sequence, something that gives people something to think about, little Easter eggs, some ideas that are present in the title sequence. But we pitched about 4 concepts, and they immediately gravitated towards this particular concept. You know, the concept is based on this idea of this alternate timeline. So if you watch Hello Tomorrow, it's basically a singular camera move that represents this idea of traveling through time and getting to the moon. So we wanted it to start with this idea of a refrigerator from the 50s, feeling like it's kind of 50s tech, but as you kind of pan up, you see all of the different advances in the alternate timeline. So there wasn't a set plan as to what the title sequence should be. You know, we watched the first few episodes, we got an idea of what the show is about, and we kind of felt there was a lot of storytelling to be had with just the world.
I think what attracted me to color correction was the fact that we were like the next stage of cinematography. And the creative side was huge, trying to understand what was wrong with an image, how to balance it, trying to understand how to let the tools do what you want them to do. Where else can the technology go? What else can we do? I'm very interested in trying to mold the image and create the best look possible. And whatever tools are out there, you want to try and latch onto them. I'm Eric Whipp, and this is my course on color correction.
And so what were the other three like that you guys pitched with them?
We did a Saul Bass kind of approach, a graphic style. We did two of them were kind of graphic. One was based on advertising from the 50s and using some of the language, some of the ad language that was so prominent. There's an underlying thread of consumerism, in the show, and this kind of race for technology to grow and build. If you look at some of the ideas that we kind of played with in the title sequence, there's a lot of nods to the 50s and how it used advertising to kind of influence the culture. And you could see, even with the spinning spirals and all those parts in there, it was intended as being a little bit of a mesmerizing moment where you feel like you're in a trance. So, because there was this idea that advertising would kind of cast a spell on you, and you would kind of be convinced to buy something. So there was, in the title, it's subtle, but it was all this kind of trance of what the media was trying to do and tell you and kind of convince you of. So we kind of took that and turned that into the visual language, mixed in with this technology, mixed in with all these ideas from the show. And we created this kind of alternate version of the universe, but it also has a little bit of eeriness to it, a little bit of snark in it that I think gives it a little attitude.
So when, we go with the one that they've chosen, what references were you given or did you use to sort of help figure out what that look was going to be?
I did these about maybe 20 years ago. I did a project in college, and it actually was right after college, but I made these postcards and I did them for like a personal advertising, and there are these characters on blue backgrounds, and it was kind of retro, and it had a cool vibe to it. And I always thought I'd be able to kind of, like, I had them in my back pocket as this idea for reference in the future. And it was interesting because I got to look back at something I designed 20 years ago and use that as an influence in the design that I worked on, recently. But it was, using product and so I referenced kind of product design, but, the 50s as a kind of whole idea of marketing I represented in the title sequence. But there's a little Ames influence in there. There's definitely some Saul Bass influence in there. I feel like I always see Saul Bass as being the great of design, that somehow he always influences everything I do. And a lot of advertising. I'll go through books and Sears catalogs and the way those pages are organized, and I'll just use those as references. One of the ideas that I had with the vacuum was that we did this singular camera move, and that's one of the things I feel like is pretty unique about it. We really simplified it to just one camera, like one singular camera move, and it really allowed the moments to live without cutting and taking you out of each aspect of it. So we did a singular camera move, and when we got to the vacuum, I really wanted this idea of it like coming towards camera and trying to grab you. There was something, again, if you look at everything, it's like a lure into pulling you in to this world of advertising. But like originally I had the type being sucked in by the vacuum, but legal department wouldn't have it for someone's credit.
That someone might think.
Yeah, but so there's a lot of little kind of allegories or innuendos that kind of have little sense of humor in there.
Well, and I noticed that when I was watching it, it was the depth that you guys sort of built in, because like a lot of title sequences have sort of like a flat feel to them, but this one you guys have somehow created that sort of really not 3D, but feels like almost in 3D space.
Yeah.
One of the questions I had for you was like, you know, back in the day, like if Saul was doing this, he would have shot it all physically with film.
Mm-hmm.
Was any of this, you know, like you have like little cardboard cutouts and stuff
Yeah.
moving around. So was anything, you know, created in the real world, or was this all digital?
Nothing was created in the real world.
Yeah.
We did kind of use references and model based on real things, but we didn't shoot physical props. We did. I did want it to feel like a mechanical camera move that feels
Mhm.
really naive, but as though someone would have shot it.
Yeah.
So I didn't get tricky with the camera. You know, I wanted it to feel a little bit to have a kind of a childhood charm to it. So
Mhm.
it almost is like one of those you know, above a child's crib, that those I forget what they're called, but
Oh yeah. Yeah.
those hanging
Mobiles.
contraptions. Yeah, a mobile. Because I wanted to have that sense of humor and relating to you know, your a person's youth.
Interesting. So what would you say were some of the challenges on this project that people might not be aware of?
Oh God, I don't know if there's many challenges. You know, there's technical challenges in terms of just crafting it and getting the right look.
Mhm.
Um, you know, the showrunners were so gracious and they just let us do what we wanted to do. And, you know, they obviously gave some feedback and kind of, you know, we worked on it together, but they really let us run with it.
Mhm.
Um, so it didn't really have any challenges other than executionally getting it to feel realistic. Um, you know, how do you put the title in there? So one of the things that I think is interesting, maybe no one else probably will, but the way the type lives in there in the
Yeah.
credits. You know,
Yeah.
often the credits are an afterthought in title sequences, which is kind of weirdly ironic. They're often just a layer that sits on top of the background. I designed the whole contraption
Yeah.
to move around the typography and to feel like there's a flow and that you actually could highlight some of the talents in the show.
Interesting.
So, but weirdly enough, that's like not a common occurrence in title sequence design. I'm working on something now where I'm really focused on the cast. Um, so so there's a lot of choreography that goes into that. So how do you hit the beats of all of these credits that need to go in there and for the right amount of time, and also keep the visual storytelling of the objects just as relevant. To me, that's the holy grail, like using the credits and the visuals at the same time.
So, you know, you're up for this Emmy. Is there something in particular you'd want the voters to notice or see in your work with this?
Well, I think it's a little different, you know, there's not hugely different, but there's a lot of layers of simplicity that
Mhm.
once you strip away some of those ideas of these like big camera moves and you rely on the storytelling using of the actual products and the typography, I think the constraint allows you to create something slightly different than the language seen in main titles today.
Mhm.
Um, you know, I think the singular camera move and the choreography around it, again, it kind of separates in a way. So and the composition of the music is so great
Yeah.
at the same time. And you know, title sequences have a tendency to be dark, brooding, and with lack of humor. Um, so it's fun to do something that's a little bit, silly and a little zany at the same time, but also has emotion. So getting out of that dark place for title sequences, is always a good thing to see.
Now, you've worked on so many title sequences and commercials and what have you. So is there like a genre of film or a genre of television that you would love to create a title sequence for? That you have-
I love anything, and I haven't done enough of it, comedies, things that or dark comedies in particular. There was something, and I will say about Candy. Candy wasn't a comedy, but we were able to do something a little snarky and subversive with it, and it had darkness, but there was a sense of being a little bit self-aware that you couldn't do with many title sequences. So like that combination of being like this dark comedy vibe, to me is could lead to some of the greatest title sequences.
So I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
I don't know if my favorite really makes me seem a little dorky, but I love Mad Men. I also Star Trek. I'm a huge Star Trek nerd.
Which one though? Because there's so many series.
Oh, definitely not the new. Like I like the old Star Trek, the Next Generation, the original series, movies. I'll often kind of see that for some of the stylistic choices. It's weird. There's something about Star Trek: The Motion Picture that has just the outfits and the kind of the way the camera work was done. It doesn't feel like today that you could make the same type of movie today. So there's definitely stuff in there that I go to and I love. But Mad Men again is just something that a show that I always watch, like rewatch episodes of. And Seinfeld.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Oh, thank you.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or, of course, on Instagram at filmmaker_you. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching. This video is made possible by our sponsors, AJA. We'd like to thank AJA for all their support and tell you to go to aja.com for all your production and post-production needs.